This is the water. And this is the well. Drink full and ascend. The horse is the white of the eyes and dark within.
Welcome to the Rewatchers in the Lodge, the podcast where we are currently watching Twin Peaks. You're here with me, Tyler Harris, and
Marcus Marinos,
Riley Harris,
Tyler McKinley,
Mitchell Marshall,
Justin Hammer.
And we just watched part 8 of season 3 of Twin Peaks, titled Got a Light, written by Mark Frost and David Lynch, directed by David Lynch, and originally aired June 25th, 2017. If you haven't seen the episode, do you know what? Most of the time I feel like I can pin it all on, I can just lay it all on Mitchell to let you know what's going on. I would go watch it. But also, since I would hate to put Mitchell out of a job, he does a great job. Mitchell is about to tell us everything that happened in part 8 of Twin Peaks. Mitchell, the floor is yours.
Listen close, my dear steeplejacks. I'm about to aurally blow your mind. Mr. C and Ray, fresh out of the clink, start to discuss something Ray has memorized that Doppelkoop needs, but Ray wants to get paid for it. When Ray gets out to pee, they both pull their gats. Mr. C's piece ain't real. Ray shoots him dead. Pirate hobo ghosts come and dance around him. They perform a C-section and pull out Bob's head. Ray drives off, freaked out. He calls Philip. Nine Inch Nails plays the Roadhouse. This goes on for several minutes. We don't see characters that we know, but the crowd looks like it's about to slither into a vampire orgy. They must be warm in those leather jackets performing on that stage. Mr. C rises from the dead. Now, here we really go. July 16th, 1945. Slow zoom on a mushroom cloud from a nuclear test. Inside is the avant-garde film reel from the 30s, or tracking, or what's under a microscope. Colorful explosions. Is this how you stop a hurricane? Then we're at an old gas station with smoke billowing from the door and the lights flashing. People meander about. The picture skips and blurs, zooms and shakes. An alien floats through the void, and a liquid, maybe semen stream full of eggs flies from it, including Bob's face orb. More explosions. Metallic blob. Where did Nadine get her superpowers? Red dots fly by. We emerge over a purple ocean and head to a lone mountain. On top, there's a fancy building. Through a rectangular hole in the wall, we enter a room with a woman in a sparkly dress. The giant comes in to check on a gauge on a science cone thing and turns off a flashing light. He leaves and walks up a semi-grand staircase to a large room where a projector is playing the nuclear explosion and all that crazy shit that we just saw. He pauses on Bob's face orb and floats straight up into the air. A spotlight follows sparkle dress lady. The screen turns into space. A gold sparkle trail emerges from the giant's head. An orange bubble that looks like a Dragon Ball floats down to the woman, and she sees Laura Palmer's face inside before releasing it up into the floating fallopian tube that spits it out into orbit on Earth within the projection screen. New Mexico desert, August 5th, 1956. An egg from the alien liquid hatches a winged frog slug thing. An adolescent couple walks, and the young girl spots a heads-up penny. That's good motherfucking luck. The charred ghost hobos walk along the desert and stop two cars. One guy goes up to the older couple and asks for a light. The man eventually drives off when the creepers start to surround them. That's a smart dude right there. I've named the young couple Jack and Susie. They walk along a dirt road by some power lines. They discuss his ex, Mary. He doesn't even miss that hoe. He asks for a kiss, and after hesitation, she gives him a soft peck before he drops her off. The radio station KPJK plays My Prayer by the Platters. That's Google checked. People around town, including Susie, listen. A zombie hobo pulls a mountain in the Viper and crushes the skull of two radio employees, including the DJ. The zombie gives a nice speech about water and the whites of the eyes and the horses over the radio. I'm sure someone can explain this better than me. People listening all over town fall dead. Where's Matthew Lillard? The winged slog frog crawls through the window of Susie's house. She almost turned off the radio before falling into a slumber. The creature crawls into a yawning Susie, and I don't know what happens next because my eyes were covered, but then he crushes the skull some more and walks out. End scene.
Wow.
Forget everything I said. If you haven't watched the episode, you just got a better summary than you could ever hope for. This was the only episode we watched this week.
And it's a good thing.
I think that's the way God intended it.
Any more plot, and it just would have convoluted. It just would have just lost us.
Yeah, an ounce more of plot, and this episode could not have held it up.
No. The different storylines we were jumping.
Man, where do you guys want to start? What were your impressions?
I do want to give a disclaimer.
Yeah.
You had shown me beforehand.
Right, yeah.
Which scene?
Right when the nuclear blast goes off.
Okay.
All the way to about the gas station.
Interesting.
So the super avant-garde
when
shit.
it started to cut from the narrative stuff to this, I was like, oh shit, here we go.
So what's crazy is I've actually seen part of that scene as well.
Okay.
I watched it in a college film class of mine.
Oh,
specifically when we were talking about avant-garde cinema. Just the scene with the giant in kind of the theater room and the orb and the floating. And
Okay, cool.
that's it.
Cool.
Yeah,
man.
we were discussing what kind of stuff we wanted to make, and all we could come up with was just trippy shit from the 70s and that.
Yeah. I'm fascinated by that sequence. I love it because it's so violent and weird. And there are a couple of those scenes where it's like there's very clearly like some scenes that are just effects, but then there's some of those shots that it's literally just like nails being poured, like very close-up shots of nails being poured just over and over and kind of like sped up and messed around with, and like it's cool. It's cool.
It's
shit.
really cool.
Do we want to like just get the narrative stuff out of the way first?
Let's
at the beginning,
do it, yeah.
and then we can
That's a good
dive
idea.
into this.
Yeah. Let's talk
Neapolitan bucket of
about yeah.
multiple flavors.
Yeah, so let's talk about the Mr. C stuff because it highlights very prevalently in this episode one of my favorite things about season 3 of Twin Peaks, which is David Lynch constantly looking into the audience's eyes and being like, "You want to ask me if I know how technology actually works? Go for it. Ask me. Ask me if I know how a cell phone works or how they would track things. Because you know what? In Twin Peaks, you can type just a fucking license plate number into the phone that's being tracked, and now they're tracking that car. Do you have a problem with that?
Is that what happened? I did not understand.
Yeah, I thought
I thought
he
he
was
was communicating with
I thought
somebody.
he was leaving it for someone to find, like, oh, this is the license plate. Like, he didn't actually text anyone.
Well, because he says before that, there are 3 trackers on this call, and there's just 3 icons that he clicks. And then says, get close to that car, looks at the thing, types it into like the text field, sends it somewhere, and then just with
Chucks
the
it
confidence
out.
of just a true man, throws that phone directly out the window.
Throws it
Mission
like
accomplished.
throws it like a burrito that's too filling.
I thought they were tracking the car.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that's
Not
that's what
anymore.
I like about this is who gives a shit, and also they're not anymore.
They're not anymore.
It's really his critique on the CSI series, you know? It's just like, they don't know how technology works, and I'm calling them out here.
I honestly, I like that read on it. I like the idea that it's like technology might as well be magic. Like the way that shows, like modern.
I mean, the
TV
way that a lot of
treats
film
technology,
uses it,
yeah,
yeah.
it might as well be magic. So we're gonna fucking use it like magic. Like we're gonna type things into it, and it's gonna know exactly what to do. Like intent is 98% of technological operation in David Lynch's universe.
I want to see David Lynch texting. Just, you know what to do, magic box. And then he presses send. Amazing.
Stop. He dictates it as though it's a telegraph. I feel like is how that works.
He only uses speech to text.
Siri? They stole you from me. Siri is the new Diane.
Now there's an idea I could get behind. Diane is an AI, but only as far as David Lynch understands AI. So, but yeah, so let's talk about that. His whole thing with Ray. We get more of some of my favorite David Lynch trademark, which is headlights on completely dark roads leading who knows where. I feel like that's something that David Lynch uses in a lot of his stuff, and I think it's effective. I like it. It always invokes this very specific emotion in me and this uncertainty, I guess, and danger for sure. I think too.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, so what did you guys think of the Ray stuff? Because he does shoot good old Mr. C.
I like that he shoots him because I didn't see it coming. I thought we were going to see Mr. C see good Cooper. I was hoping for a good old standoff between the two doppelgangers. But, I mean, we still might. He, kind of rose from the dead there. We don't really know what's going on. But, yeah, at some point, we know he asked for a gun in the glove box. Somehow there were two guns, and his gun wasn't real. He must have known something. I don't know, because they got out because of blackmail on the warden. But what was really interesting to me is after he shot him, he kind of experiences what's going on with the ghost things. But then he leaves and he calls Philip. He says Philip, right?
Yeah.
I don't know who he's talking to, but it almost seems like he maybe have been kind of double-crossing. Like he might actually be important and not just like the trashy weirdo we thought he was.
Yeah, Ray, you mean?
Ray, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But that's what I was curious about mostly was the phone call afterwards. And I mean, yeah, he shoots him, it's huge. That's like Ned Stark dying.
Yeah.
You know?
Remind me, is this the first time we've heard anyone else refer to Philip Jeffries, like outside of the FBI people?
I don't know. Not.
I think it's the first non-FBI person.
Okay. Because I couldn't remember. I know in Daria's conversation with Ray, I think he mentioned someone, that he's working with someone, but doesn't specify who that could be.
I guess we do get the implication that Ray is involved because when he's with Daria, he then gets out his weird computer thing, and he does talk about Philip. So it kind of makes sense that there's that connection. But I sure didn't get the impression that Daria and Ray would be directly connected to Philip.
No, for sure,
that
yeah.
much, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, Philip Jeffries is somehow actively participating
he
in more
seems to
people's
be
lives
behind the
than we think.
scenes of
Right.
most of the non-Dougie stuff. Is what it seems to me, at least.
Yeah.
The race got some numbers memorized, which I would guess are the numbers that the Giant told Cooper at the beginning. Is my guess what those are.
Yeah.
I don't know what those numbers. Still have no clue what they represent, but
Yeah. I know earlier Mr. C does mention when he's talking to Daria before he kills her that Ray was getting coordinates of some kind. Because he does ask her that before he kills her. He's like, these numbers could save your life, essentially. But she doesn't know what he's talking about. And that those numbers are somehow tied to Buckhorn. Because Ray was talking to Bill Hastings' secretary, who supposedly would have known numbers that Bill Hastings would have known. So there's also that other still tenuous thread connected to that somehow. But yeah, so I mean, essentially from the point that Cooper gets shot, or Mr. C gets shot, on to the end of the episode is full of.
Oh, we did
like people.
Real quick,
go
we did
ahead.
have another when he shoots him. We did have another one of those visual, splices,
like a hitch, and in that
happened.
between the first and second shot. Yeah, for sure.
which would symbolize some connection with the previous time that happened, which is when he shot. I can't remember her name.
Bill Hastings' wife,
yeah.
whatever her name is. I forget. Phyllis, maybe? I don't know.
So yeah, maybe she was. Maybe it's like when the death of a Black Lodge figure happens or something that
But he
happens.
didn't even die.
Right.
Well, but
Or did he?
I don't
Did
know.
Some part of him died.
yeah,
Bob
well,
has
I'm
left
wondering.
his body.
Yeah, I'm wondering if though that it's like he's dead, but now he's completely that's now Bob because
Maybe Dougie.
because what?
Because Dougie was the third Cooper. And what?
Oh
Wait
my
a minute.
gosh.
And if Bob, okay, go on. Sorry, that was.
Yeah, no.
Oh yeah, it was the right. You're saying the rising one is now Dougie?
Well, why not? I mean, so
Original
I'm
Dougie,
just trying. I'm not
like
refuting
yeah,
it.
original Dougie.
Dougie that went to the Black
Yeah.
Lodge. Dougie.
Right,
Gotcha.
because we had two Cooper. It seems like ever since he returned, like we've had two Coopers on Earth plus one in the Black Lodge. That maybe Dougie gets another shot at, but he's just in another body that looks like his, and now there's going to be a lot of confusion when Naomi Watts comes home.
I'm okay. All right.
I would love for this to turn into just a 50s ass weird relationship thing where it's like the theme song is like, she came home and there were two husbands and now they're through. Like it's just like this ridiculous thing of like, oh, Dougie, and they both turn around and they're like, oh.
I wouldn't be surprised, honestly, at this point.
It could go anywhere. It could go any
for it.
direction.
I just have to say, Colin McLaughlin's performance in this season is incredible.
Yeah.
With everything that he has to do, and especially as Mr. C, there will be things that he does that are so minimalistic that are terrifying. Just like a look, and man, it's really good stuff.
Yeah, I feel like it's amazing to me. That is not a character that I think anyone is looking to cast Kyle MacLachlan in.
No, he has never played any sort of character like that.
And
ever.
yeah,
he kills it.
Yeah, he's great. It's I think you can say that about his entire performance. Like the Dougie stuff too is so minimalistic and so intentional, and it's great.
puts just enough
so
Cooper into it.
wildly different.
Yeah,
Man.
And the idea that if he was filming some things at different stages, like you said, they were shooting kind of location at a time.
Yeah.
To think that he was shooting things later in the progression of this season, really early on, is really impressive. To keep track of that and make sure you know where you're supposed to be at emotionally and developmentally and evilly and all that shit.
Yeah, for sure. So let's talk a little bit about what happens right after Mr. C gets shot. We see everyone's favorite background characters. What do you guys want to call them? Does anyone have names for them? I mean, you came up with Susie and
Jack and Susie from the 50s. In the credits, it calls him 50s boy, I think. But I thought the girl actually called him Bruce, and I had already written Jack and Susie after that, so I was like, nah. So I stuck with that.
Can we call him the roasted rabble?
Let's call him the roasted rabble.
Well, we do see someone we know. So after a lot of explosions and things that seem to be like inside of things and really visual things that don't give us a lot, we do see, once we see the liquid stream with the eggs inside and the floating head. That's what there was.
No, that's what's happening. I'm just trying to I'm just imagining
we
if
see,
someone
like-
just
Has
came in
not
and started
seen
this
it.
thing.
Yeah.
We see the giant character we somewhat know. We don't really know anything about him, but we've seen him before. He's in this black and white place with a woman in a sparkly dress. And so from there, I felt like there might be some connections to be made to the lodges and to actual, I don't want to go as far as say actual plot, but I mean to maybe some ideas that we're actually going to connect with. And then we see those creepy looking zombie dudes reappear, and we kind of get this little subset of this New Mexico town, I think, in the 50s.
Yeah. And I definitely want to talk about all that because so first of all, let's go section by section, I guess, with this stuff. Does that work for everyone? And please, if you have any thoughts, feel free to derail. I don't feel like we can make this any more confusing. But I do want to start. I'd actually talked to Justin this week because I wanted to talk about the nuclear. Justin's wife called it the nuclear fantasia.
Yeah,
which
I think so.
I think is an apt
Killer.
name for what happens. And so, but that whole sequence is underscored by a very well-known musical piece, right? You'd say
Yeah.
well-known, right?
Yeah.
That is called, correct me if this is wrong, Threnody for the Victims of Hiroshima,
Yep.
by Penderecki. But yeah, I wasn't sure if there were any insights that you had into that specific piece of music because it's used in a lot of things. It's used in The Shining, famously.
Yeah. Parts of it are, yeah.
And yeah, I don't know if you had anything on that or.
I got
any
some
thoughts.
notes.
Cool.
Yeah, I looked up. I don't know how in depth, like.
Yeah. I mean,
it's hard to tie a lot of this stuff to what we just experienced,
Right.
too. But like,
and I think too, like, because we talked earlier, if you didn't see this nuclear explosion coming, David Lynch put it on the fucking wall of Gordon Cole's office. How could you not know there was going to be a 15-minute atom bomb sequence? But I do think that's I don't know. I think maybe insight into that choice of that stuff. I don't know.
Yeah.
I just think that's
Okay.
interesting and could be good. But
so something that is actually pretty interesting about that, which I'll just say this. So Penderecki originally did not title the piece Threnody for the Victims of Hiroshima. The original title for the piece was I was like what was it? 8 minutes and 37 seconds, I think, is the title for the piece, which is the estimated running length of the piece, approximately. John Cage's 4 minutes and 33 seconds had recently come out a couple years prior to when Penderecki composed this, or while he was composing it. So it was kind of, if you're not familiar with 4 minutes and 33 seconds, it's an interesting musical exploration. It's the piece where the performers sit on stage in silence for 4 minutes and 33 seconds, and you just experience the performance of silence. I mean, it's not silence, it's more about the experience of, well, anyways.
Right.
Yeah. So the original title didn't have anything to do with Hiroshima or imagery of the bomb or any of that stuff. It kind of evolved eventually. I think Penderecki titled it, he like renamed the piece to just Threnody eventually, and then he eventually settled on Threnody for the Victims of Hiroshima. And despite that, he was, I got it somewhere in my notes here. He says that works, so he has another piece called the Polish Requiem. He says works like the Polish Requiem or the earlier Threnody for the Victims of Hiroshima, while they may possess an autonomous artistic existence, are liable to be read as journalism. So his intention wasn't necessarily to create a piece that was going to evoke imagery of what people went through when the bombs were dropped on Hiroshima. But that's kind of how that over time, that's sort of what the piece has been associated with. Right. Which I thought was interesting because, like, so we get the imagery of the bomb going off, but then it's just chaos after that. And that's kind of originally, I think, I believe the notes that I looked up, Penderecki said that was kind of like he had this thought of just like chaos or sort of this emotional idea that he was trying to express through writing this stuff. So it wasn't, it's kind of interesting that we go from seeing the bomb, hearing this piece of music that is so closely associated with that, and then going into chaos, where that's sort of what the piece is more about. Right. I mean, does that make sense? I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah,
that's really interesting.
Yeah, and honestly, I think about that in the terms of the visuals that were given. I think this is such a fascinating section to be in a TV show, because what the fuck are you doing? But that whole opening is so beautiful. That shot of the desert and that slow, like, into that cloud is breathtaking. And it's one of those things where it's like, it's almost so beautiful, you have to remind yourself how destructive it is and what is actually happening. Because you're watching that shockwave just slowly emanate from the center of that. And then once you are in that, it is insane. Like, it is disorienting. It is uncomfortable. It is unparsable. Like, there's not anything to grab onto.
There's no logic, no direction.
Well, I think it's interesting that musical piece is preceded by Nine Inch Nails.
That's a good point.
In its entirety, that song, it seems like. I mean, I'm not a huge Nine Inch Nails fan. I've got a lot of opinions about them. But I think they're used very well here. Yeah. And I think this episode is incredible because just look at the bullet points of like, you know, you list them off, you know? And the fact that you have, like, Mr. C getting shot with this weird C-section, Nine Inch Nails performs.
A full concert.
Yeah. Atomic blast into just the most, like, avant-garde third act of 2001: A Space Odyssey shit. Yeah. Like, and then think, this is the same show where episodes ago we had a man who was, like, spilling coffee on the ground and, like, spitting it. Like, the same stuff with Dougie is the same show, which is incredible. But that Nine Inch Nails song is very, it kind of on those same lines. It's very chaotic. It's very, like, kind of all over the place. Doesn't follow a very traditional sense of, like, music. I mean, it's still, like, got time signatures and stuff, but it's very violent. It's very, but not metal aggressive or anything. There's, like, a random just, like, the, like, intense electric guitar tremolo just randomly thrown in there occasionally with, like, his maniacal, like, laugh that, like, kind of fades out. is all just very interesting. And then they play that whole thing, and the whole episode is very slow.
Yeah.
Right? Like, everything is really drawn out. And I really like that when it comes to the imagery stuff that we get here, because that long pan to that atomic blast it gave me time to really contemplate, if it just was like a normal speed, I would say in quotes, of like what another director might do, I wouldn't have spent the time thinking about the destructive nature of that, and also connecting that to the events that had just happened, which I could be way off on this. We have, Shadow Cooper and regular Cooper. Mm-hmm. One of them has just been died.
He's been died.
That's how we say it.
That's right before Horatio puts on his sunglasses in CSI Miami. This man's been died.
Anyway, one of them has just been killed. And kind of that's been separated, much like the splitting of an atom, which is, atomic bomb. So like right when that happens, that's transitions into that of an atomic bomb. Everything's shot in black and white, which is also very on purpose of that duality once again, and just the violent nature that causes when you split something like that. So we don't really see the aftermath so much, but I assume going forward there's going to be like shit's gonna pick up and shit's gonna get heavy, and it's that I think that's I would guess that's metaphorical for the violence of a atomic bomb being what happens when two of the same person exist in the same sphere and then are split apart, or so to say.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great read.
I like that a lot.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I thought as soon as the title card came up and it was like 1945, the first thing that came to my mind was Briggs, because when he comes back from the thing, Tyler mentioned that he's in like a pilot's uniform, like a World War II sort of pilot. Maybe it was World War I. But I was like, oh, we're definitely going to get some insight in Briggs. Maybe he was going to stop the nuke, and the nuke caused all of this crazy shit to happen or something. I don't know.
Yeah. No, I think that's an interesting way too. I think it's worth noting too. Just to touch on the Nine Inch Nails thing in a minute. That song too, lyrically, is really interesting. The title of the song is "She's Gone Away." I believe it's a song that is on one of their albums.
Was it like kind of a tribute to the original season of Twin Peaks?
I do not know. But it feels almost specific to that. There's a line in there where he says, "I watched her on the day she died." Like there's these very like disturbing and general enough things, but that are very applicable, I think, to Twin Peaks. And I think in that way it's probably just a very savvy choice, a very specific choice for that song to be the one that the Nine Inch Nails perform on Twin Peaks. But yeah, it's really interesting. I did want to talk, Mitchell, you kind of mentioned something earlier that I wanted to get back to. When we see Bob in these episodes, the first time we see him, he is coming out of Mr. C's stomach. And the imagery that I've had with me since I watched this was it's like a placenta almost. Like it's this, and it's funny, this week actually, I saw someone who posted this video on Reddit of an amniotic birth, which I don't know if you know what that is. It's when
it's still in the sack. Right?
Yeah.
Oh,
it's like very rare. It's like 1 in 80,000 births or something, according to a Reddit headline. Don't fact check. I don't know. Whatever. It's rare. But honestly, seeing the image of a baby in a placenta, like outside, where it should not be in a placenta, it does kind of conjure those images, you know what I mean, of this weird. And so I wanted to talk, like, you kind of saw something that was sort of like birth related, and I think that's something that we can talk about a lot with this episode, or like,
I think all around, I like the imagery he just talked about, like an atom splits, about like the splitting and this coming out, but also it's the birth, and maybe you'd say it births chaos or bad, but you could also say it's just something new. So what I saw is, at first I was like, you're just being weird, but the gold stuff that comes out of, and we've seen, by the way, when the kid dies, we see some gold sparkly thing raise up in the sky.
Yeah.
in one of the last couple of episodes. And so this one, when the giant, he just starts floating up, and while he's up there, the stuff comes out of his mouth, and it honestly looks like it might be in the shape of a uterus, and it clearly has these two things going out, which is like the shape where like you'd go out to the ovaries and stuff, and then from there, this ball egg thing comes out, and then it goes through like a pipe tube thing and kind of gets put in where it looks like it's the moon or something around the earth as its color kind of fades in and out. So yeah, there's absolutely some rebirthing imagery going on here.
Yeah. Well, and we also see later in the episode, we see that
egg hatching
thing. Yeah, we see an egg hatch and a creature come out of that. Also, So there, I think there's a lot of that. Something I noticed this time, probably not related, but I think in the spirit of like seeing Bob's head in this circular orb, we also have this girl picks up a penny, which is also just a circle with some dude's head in it.
Yeah.
Oh,
which I don't
good
know.
point.
It's probably not like that important, but just kind of this thematic thing that's just running through this entire episode and this visual, this imagery that's there. But yeah, I think let's talk real quick about the we see the experiment again, which we have not seen since which we called the experiment, the glass box creature,
Right.
floating.
The creature from
That's where that
Silver
egg
music
comes
video.
from, which eventually,
Presumably, yeah.
be where that the little frog slug thing that crawls into Susie's mouth comes from, and but we also that's where the Bob orb goes. Is it looks like it is streaming from the alien that we saw in the box in New York initially.
Yeah,
It is floating very much like the giant is floating, kind of
yeah.
the same diagonal,
Almost
but
like an
opposite.
inverted,
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
We see the eggs in there, and then we also see Bob. Okay, here's another stretch theory I've got here.
Sweet.
That's where we first see Bob and the eggs, right? That girl, Susie, is what we're calling her, is Laura Palmer's ancestor.
Okay.
Not because this is once again way out there. Anyway, they see the atomic bomb go off, which I believe is has a dualistic representation of what just happened beforehand. For some reason, obviously, I think time is irrelevant here. I think in whatever world the giant resides, time is like a non-linear thing.
Oh yeah. That's fair.
So in response to this, he then creates, births Laura Palmer, and shoots her to the earth. Which isn't it the scene after that egg hatches?
Yes, we see time pass because it shows the 1946 or 46.
I think it's 1945, and then it's 56.
Right.
So the egg hatches and emerges a locust toad hybrid, which is, I think, important to note that those are two of the plagues of Egypt are locusts and toads.
Yeah.
Which then it eventually crawls into this girl's mouth. Now she gets that lucky penny, which I think is like kind of being like she's going to be the one of these people who is spared from the future fate of the radio listeners. And anyway, this thing crawling into her mouth, I believe, is what will save her from that, but then is also now cursed her and become a plague upon her and her lineage, right? Meaning, Leland is also a descendant of her, and they're the ones who are susceptible to being possessed by members of the Black Lodge.
Okay.
So, Bob being able to go into them, and yeah, that would be my stupid theory.
That's
It's not
interesting.
stupid.
Yeah, I like that.
The kids could presumably be 11 as well, which I just thought about. If we're 11 years from Blast to time that we're in New Mexico, the kids could be 11, and yeah, time-wise, as far as the age of Leland Palmer, I suppose that could all work out.
Sure. Yeah. I think the idea of tying kind of the Black Lodge stuff to the atomic bomb, I think, is really important too, because I do feel like it is one of those things. It's humanity proving how fucked it can be. I mean, how like the great evil that we can accomplish when we're given just enough motivation. And the idea too that in that moment or tied to that moment, Bob is created or takes a stronger form or whatever that is, I think is an interesting and horrifying thing.
Yeah, we have talked about how Bob is kind of a representation of evil. Like that could
Right,
be his
yeah.
whole purpose. In
Absolutely.
The show.
I'm really hoping that the idea or the read, I don't know, I don't really like the read of like this evil being birthed or created from what we perceive as, a lot of people perceive as humanity's kind of like greatest evil achievement, like the atom bomb, or like that technology as being like our greatest potential for evil or whatever. Because I feel like that's just like, I don't know, to me that it kind of reduces everything a little bit too much. It's too simplistic for me. I don't know. I don't really like that too much.
And
like,
I don't think that it's that it created. I don't think it's that we created Bob.
yeah, the idea that this is like a criticism or a critique of nuclear warfare or something like that.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like David Lynch maybe. This sounds really conceited, maybe of me, but I feel like he's above that almost. Like that's a little too easy, maybe.
Yeah. Well, and I think let me try to rephrase this a little bit. Because I don't think that it's an A to B thing where it's like this happened and this happened. To me, I'm about to give my general overview of what I feel that Twin Peaks is, and what Twin Peaks tries to do is the idea of introducing cosmic elements that we are not meant to understand. We've talked a lot about aliens in this show. We've talked a lot about a bunch of those things. I think Twin Peaks goes out of its way. It has a lot of this alien stuff, especially like secret history stuff we've talked about. I think one of the biggest things that Twin Peaks tries to do is that we as human beings misunderstand all this cosmic shit that is going on around us. And what we think are aliens and what we think are demons are in fact one thing, you know what I mean? This cosmic force. And we know that these forces have been around long prior to the atomic bomb, right?
Right. Yeah.
But the idea that something changed, something fundamentally changed with that action, you know what I mean? With that. And I don't know. That's as much as I want to connect those things, but I do think it's important to, at least for me, as I've tried to understand Twin Peaks, as I've gone into it more and more that I think about it, it's trying to divorce my own biases of like what I feel like I'm seeing versus like this much bigger thing. Anyways, sorry, I'm getting off the rails here.
I like what you're saying because I feel like it helps me. The way I kind of feel about this, the whole series, I guess, is that, more recently, this with the return, I feel like it kind of puts, like what you're saying, humanity, the idea that we have an idea of what's going on, or that that we're important, even, is kind of, that's sort of what is being put, like that's got the light on it. Like we think we've got all this stuff figured out. We look at what we can do with science and this power and whatever, but it's like, how important is all of that in the grand scheme of things? Like, it's kind of an existential kind of thing where you start feeling really small, and like how I feel every day of my life.
Wow. Wow.
We got a little more.
Hey, you know what? You're important to us.
Oh,
Justin.
thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Look,
Literally, this podcast
you're
doesn't
taking
work
your
really.
grass dying really hard, Justin.
Hey, it got replaced. But that doesn't even matter, really. What really matters?
No, but I think that those are all important bits. But I still feel like, I don't know. Anytime I get on to the conversation with anyone about, really the importance of humanity and anything, it always comes down to, this is going to be a weird connection, right? It's that David Bowie quote at the beginning of Breakfast Club, which is a big, has been a huge impact on me as like going into adulthood and having a kid, and like I'd even like catch myself the other day, because my son is like in the middle of his like a child's tantrum heyday, and it's something along the lines of like, I don't know what the quote, I can't even remember anything close to what the quote actually is, but it comes down to essentially like, the drama that teenagers go through, it may be stupid, but it's real for them because that's where their development's at. And you need to respect that and understand that. And it's the same thing, with him, with my son. It was like, I have to be better as a parent of understanding this is him, not getting to take all of his little cutout letters with him everywhere he goes is a stupid, but it is very real for him and traumatic for him. Yeah. And I need to find out how to best deal with that. It's kind of the same thing with humanity in general. We're talking about the grand scheme of everything is, we're insignificant, but it's real.
Right.
It's real to us. And I think there is a level of respect you have to have for that. And I think that stuff like this does a good job of illustrating that, especially with the rest of the stuff that this show is.
Yeah.
Because I feel like this episode does a good job of putting it in perspective. Humanity is really nothing, but the other moments of the show, especially since it is so soap opera toned, is, but it is real. It is important. And I think just coming to the point of being with the atomic bomb type thing is not so much the end. I think it's more that, once again, going with that theme of the show, duality of we're always capable of great good and great evil, and it's always going to morph into something, whether it's going to ebb and flow, become bigger and grander and be chaos, and eventually, one will triumph over the other occasionally, but it will never end is kind of what I get from it.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, this episode also, Laura Palmer's face is in that golden orb. And presumably that is this essence of good that is then sent to Earth, presumably in the form of humanity. You know what I mean? Like, so there is this other. It's saying we're very small in the grand scheme of things, but also there's potential. I don't know. There is something there that I think Laura Palmer, at least in this sense, is elevated in a way, in a cosmic sense, that I don't think the show has done before, and so there's a lot of interesting stuff there.
It could be like, if you want to look at it more narratively, like it's more of a catalyst for certain events to take place, not necessarily that Laura Palmer is going to, is a savior of any type or anything. It's more just like, we know she has an important role that will then trigger these important events.
You could also consider it as like a failure because Laura Palmer gets corrupted and taken down and ends up in the Black Lodge. I also see this as almost a closed loop because when his head comes out and then we go backwards, I thought we could either look at this as a flashback, as here's maybe where Bob has been before, or we could look at it as here's where Bob's head went. Like you said, once you're up to that level, you may not be following a linear time, so it could just be that head goes back. This stuff happens in the 50s. Laura Palmer comes in, gets corrupted, goes bad. All the stuff happens until Mr. C gets shot, which means from episode 9 onward is the first time we are getting something outside of maybe what is a closed loop, and we get to see what actually happens with it.
Cool. I like that. Yeah, that's
cool
interesting.
Idea.
Yeah. Let's talk. I feel like I expected this episode to go this way. I'm sorry. This is like just fucking. I seriously, I told you guys the first time I watched this episode, I just couldn't move for like 10 minutes afterwards because I was like, I'm afraid. I'm afraid, but I don't know of what. It's not like I think a face is going to appear. I'm just afraid of existing.
This reminds me of my sophomore philosophy class in college.
Do you have any good notes, Riley? Did you take any...
What are we missing?
You're the one that always catches the things we miss.
I took notes, but it doesn't make
sense. This reminds me of my sophomore year philosophy class in college, which I thought I'd really love, but was horrendous. But this was much better. So,
well, let's. We could literally talk about this shit for hours and hours.
Oh I love talking about this shit.
But let's talk about the narrative, kind of the back half of this episode. We're introduced to the woods, or what do we call them?
What do they call them?
The roasted rabble.
The roasted rabble, who we've seen previously.
Who are, I don't know if we discussed this. Are they supposed to be the victims of the atomic bomb? Is that what everyone else?
When have we seen them previously? Or are we talking about in this episode?
So in Buckhorn, I mean, that's this, like when it pans over to the cell, there's the guy.
Dude disappears.
And also Lieutenant Knox when she's looking at Brick's body. and then doing this weird ritual on Cooper where they're rubbing his own blood on his face.
That was
and,
fucking creepy.
It's
also pretty it was also pretty cool.
yeah, that's shit. Yeah, it's creepy and cool.
Which is the thought that most people have before they join a cult, you know?
All right, look, I already did that.
Creepy,
All right.
but I'm into it.
That's how I want my C-section to go.
Gosh.
So the
cosmic midwives come and rub the blood on your face. Don't worry, they're professionals.
So when the nuke goes off, we see the gas station, which with the convenience store, and they're all kind of walking around and doing their thing. But this is not the first time we've heard the mention of a convenience store, which is interesting to me.
Right, yeah.
Which, like Mike and Bob used to live above a convenience store. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Which, I don't know. For me, it's definitely not a coincidence. I feel like there's so much weird shit happening. You're like, I feel like I could ignore some of this, but I think all of it is very intentional.
Right. Yeah, they're very specific, like, touchstones. I mean, we're seeing the giant again. We're seeing him in a place that looks very similar to the very first scene of The Return when he's talking to Cooper. We're in that black and white scene. Like, the carpet is that same carpet that's in that place that he's in. So, and presumably, like, that ocean looks like what Cooper falls onto.
Do you think it could be the same building? Do we ever see the full building in the first episode?
No, we do not. But we see a lot of similar structures. Like, there's those weird electrical boxes.
Oh, yeah. It's like the same shape as the rock.
That, like, the woman flips on and, like, electrocutes herself into the void.
Well, there's some same techniques also used in this segment of, like, the jumping back and forth, the editing, like, of the... Like, everything's really jittery and, like, the door, like... Even though that convenience store is, like, rustling like that.
Cool.
Yeah.
And so it gives you such an eerie vibe, that whole scene.
Well, and I think part of that, there's something I love about that scene that I just have been thinking about the last couple times I've seen it, is that the sound in that scene cuts in and out in a way that it sounds like your speakers are getting fucked up. Like, and it's almost like the electrical interference that people experience when the Black Lodge is near. But it, like, brings that into your home in a way that it's, like, actually interfering with your shit, which is weird. I don't know. That's probably just me being like...
That's some Metal Gear Solid on the PS1 shit right there.
You also like to play Shenmue. Holy shit.
Nobody likes to play that.
Just because I have a save file does not mean I enjoyed the experience. Yeah, great. More Metal Gear Solid references, I think, is what we need. But yeah, so we're seeing those guys again, and we basically, like, the back half of this episode kind of revolves around one of those men.
He just wants to smoke, yo.
yeah. That is a segment I want to try. I want to try to introduce this more. All of us doing our best imitations of a specific line from the episode, and see who can do it better. I'd just like to see how everyone can do "Got a Light" if we get as close to the Woodsman. So I'll start. Let me see. Sorry, I didn't really warm up prior to this because I'm a professional.
How about you do instead David Lynch pitching the line?
Okay, yeah. A New Mexico road. It's 1956 now. An overweight American couple, who I'm not going to go into exactly right now, is sitting in their car driving home from possibly a dance. We probably won't show that. They're stopped on the road by men. Men who are walking across the road. Now, this is in the desert. There are no crosswalks in the desert. A man approaches the window, a cigarette in his right hand, and says, "Got a light." The man is confused by this. He says it again. "Got a light." The woman, being more in tune with the spiritual chakras of the realm, knows something is wrong. She screams. The man says one more time, "Got a light." The man coming to his senses speeds off. Now, what's so goddamn hard about setting this shot up?
You may have thought that was Tyler. That was an actual recording of
I could
Mr.
do
Lynch
this for
himself.
7 hours.
We might have to start a whole new podcast to let you do it 7 hours because you're fucking good at it. You've watched way too many interviews with this man.
It's easily my favorite moment of this entire podcast. That was incredible.
But yeah, okay. So I do have a couple questions about this scene because it mirrors something that happens earlier in the episode that I just noticed this time. When Ray is seeing the woodsmen like do their ritual, he also kind of like vocalizes, and it's this slowed down, like warped thing, which we also get from the wife in the car. Which also kind of introduces this idea of time behaving strangely around these entities. Because the man seems unaffected, like he is moving normally. It doesn't seem slowed down.
He opens the door even a little bit, which seems stupid.
Very stupid. Do not do that.
But like clearly, anyone would know what Godlight means,
Right, yeah. And it becomes, I mean, I think that's a theme that we can talk about throughout this episode is the idea of this, I don't know, even like ritualistic, this repetition.
We have the fire walk with me sort of like ritual thing that people say, and then he has the thing he says over the radio station.
Yeah, the Godlight, and let's talk about that in a minute. But let's keep that in mind, kind of the repetition, because I do want to get back to that. But yeah, again, headlights on dark roads. That moment where they swerve away from hitting the guy who's then standing directly in the lane always feels so visceral and real to me in an uncomfortable way.
I wanted him to hit him.
Just take him out. So that's their part. That's all we see of them. But these men have descended on this town and are gonna do some stuff. Let's talk a little bit about the young couple. I'm sorry, I keep
Jack
forgetting
and
their names.
Susie.
Jack and Susie.
I gave you the two most generic 50s names of all time. Come on.
Which their scenes are very simple.
I love it. I feel like that was some sure that David Lynch wanted to make a long time ago.
Like I almost want David Lynch to do like a full movie in that time era in that style in black and white.
Yeah.
They're walking past what looks like some sort of maybe dance hall, but there's nothing going on inside, just like a larger building. Yeah. And then they're kind of this weird street by some streetlights, and then all of a sudden they're kind of on Susie's street. They talk about where he lives. They talk about, I heard you were going with Mary. I love the term "going with." Like,
yeah.
And then they get a little kid. I'm like, oh, what a pure little moment of like these kids' lives, and she's wearing this big Poofies 50s dress. And to me, that was just so interesting, and I was like, oh, one of them's going to die soon. So
Yeah. Go ahead.
When we first see the couple, are they in front of the convenience store?
Yeah, that's what I
Did it
thought.
look
I thought
like
it was
that?
a much
Okay.
larger building, but that
okay.
I could be wrong.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't know. I don't think it was the convenience. It could be. I don't know.
I think it was a gas station.
Yeah, it's very
I
similar.
I thought it was like
Okay.
an updated version of the convenience store from the one that we saw previously.
Interesting.
That's
That's
what
an interesting
I
thought.
thought.
Okay. Yeah.
Historically, those blasts, because we did test nuclear bombs in both Nevada and New Mexico, weren't they not done? I thought they were like in the middle of freaking nowhere. Are they places where people had maybe even previously lived in the 1800s and they said it cleared out? I'm just curious, like, maybe it doesn't
I thought
matter.
there were like some issues about like some people being downwind.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
definitely
Okay.
There's a lot of people that were affected by it. Yeah.
And it
job,
does
America.
like it does just differentiate those moments. It like when we do see the update to 1956, it does say just New Mexico desert. We don't
Right.
get the specific. So I don't know. Yeah,
Could those
I
be
don't
the
know, it keeps it
coordinates he's
generic.
looking for?
New
Maybe,
Mexico desert.
honestly.
He's just, I'll write the
that's
coordinates on this piece of paper.
I mean, considering how he thinks
New
technology
Mexico
works, might be what he is.
He just types New Mexico desert into his phone.
The Google Maps.
It gives him a very specific.
Diane, bring me New Mexico desert.
I need a mason jar of dirt from this location. Yeah. So, but yeah, I love the quaintness of that. I think that moment with the kiss feels weird in the right way. You know what I mean? It feels like this very natural moment where there's this hesitance and fear, I think, on her part. And then later when we see her in her bed, she just has that look.
It's so whimsical,
just...
we all remember being that little 11-year-old girl.
Specifically, which is why this episode's so powerful. But yeah, so we see that, and then we see some of my favorite sets, I guess locations in this episode. They just look so cool. They're so quintessentially 50s.
And we get the diner, which also I think is important that it echoes the double R, which is sort of 50s, but it definitely has some of the same feelings. We get the radio station, which obviously we'll talk about why that's extra impactful, but then we kind of see a few people who we just see them 2 or 3 times randomly listening to the radio. It's just it's such a fascinating little moment in this big thing of Twin Peaks.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting and cool that we just see the effects on those very specific areas. We're not seeing 15 shots of people of this whole town falling asleep. It's just this guy in this auto shop, this woman at this diner, and this girl in her room. It feels so individual and specific, while still communicating the bigger implications of this.
Well, it actually wasn't a very popular radio station. Those were the only people listening.
He picked the worst possible radio station to get that message out. Terrible.
Everyone was listening to Little Orphan Annie, except for these 3 people just listening to music. Yeah, that is an interesting thing. I love that David Lynch put that detail in there.
I'm sorry.
No, that's a good observation, Marcus. Please don't hold those things back. I want more of them. Is what I'm trying to say. But let's talk about just the end of this episode, which is I keep fucking forgetting the
rabble.
The Reuben,
dirty. I think we changed their name to the Cosmic Midwives.
So Cosmic Midwife walks into a radio station. He says, "Got a light," and they don't got one. This joke's going nowhere. But anyways, crushes this woman's head. I will say the sound design in this episode is
horrifying.
Yeah, it's incredible. And recently, Dean Hurley and David Lynch are actually getting an award from the Sound Editors Guild or something for this specific episode. It was just announced a month ago or so that they were getting.
They give awards. They're like, let's see what really resonates in 2 years.
Resonates, good choice of word. Their sound, it's sound.
Oh, I got you. Okay,
it will reverberate through time.
I was like, oh.
So yeah, but that just crushes her head essentially, in a very horrifying visual that we get of
time.
That.
Also warps there a little bit as well.
Yeah, it's a bizarre thing.
And he does it with one hand, right? Like he can palm a basketball.
Well, he's holding the cig with his other hand.
You're right.
Yeah,
it looks like he sticks his thumb in her forehead almost.
Yeah. Which I think that the fascinating thing about that scene too is there's nothing. I mean, if you do remove the sound from that scene, it just looks like he's kind of forcing her down. But those sounds give you this very visceral idea of bones shifting and just colliding in ways they should not. And then the scene. Let's talk about the repetition here of when he does go in. Ruins the song. There's no need
nice
for that.
Song. Well, I just want to shout out the Platters one more time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great song. That is a great... I will say, the music in this episode, we get one song from every bucket that David Lynch pulls music from. We have a Nine Inch Nails song. We have this insane avant-garde Penderecki composition. Then we have an Angelo Badalamenti song, Slow 30s Room, that David Lynch also helped write
and perform. Apparently.
Yeah, whatever that means.
Incredible.
Yeah. And then we have just a licensed
Some 50s
recognizable song from the 50s that sets the tone. I feel like it feels like this breath of fresh air, like something that you can grab onto after this whirlwind of stuff that you've gone through, and then immediately that is also ripped away.
Yeah, the sound of that record scratching made me cringe more than the skull crushing.
Oh,
I was
yeah.
like, don't do that.
That would sell for $15 today on Discogs, but not anymore. Near mint my ass.
Unless it was the record they used in that show.
Yeah, that's true.
Might sell for more.
But yeah, then proceeds to send his diatribe over the airwaves. Riley, I'm sure you have it word for word.
Kind of. It was hard to understand, especially like towards the end.
Okay, yeah, let's see what you have.
What it was. So this is the water and this is the well. Drink full and descend. Then this is where it gets dicey. The horse is the white of the eyes and dark within.
Yeah.
Is that it?
I think that's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds right.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, you know.
I just didn't want
Fun
to be
things.
I didn't want to have to be the one to repeat that into a microphone. So thanks.
I could do it more
kill?
times if you want.
All our listeners are now dead.
Yeah, it's another one of those things. I feel like David Lynch is really good at attaching meaning to things that don't necessarily have an overt meaning, which there's nothing in this phrase that makes me think I unlocked it. I get Twin Peaks now. But what it does leave me with at the end is just this sense of dread. Like there's an imposing nature to that delivery and those words that just conjure up this imagery, like a well. I don't know. To me, a well is a terrifying thing. Like I don't have any experience with wells. I'm not talking about like wells that people who live out in the country use for water, but like an actual old ass, just like stone well and descend. I don't know.
Like in The Ring.
It's the
Which,
Ring.
by the way, their voice sounds... His creaky voice kind of sounds like The Ring.
Oh, it's been so long
you
since
got
I've
The
seen I didn't even
Ring,
think about
you've
that.
got
Yeah.
Tiki Tiki Tembo falling in that well. Who else you got?
Annabelle Creation.
Annabelle Creation
Yeah,
apparently
yeah,
has a
lots of
Wells
well.
are never good. I went to a haunted house last
Oh,
night.
the
and there
bottom
was
of the
a
well, the
What?
bottom of
Which
the well in
one?
Ocarina of
Haunted Forest.
Time.
True.
Was it good? Good times?
We'll talk about it. We can talk about it.
But yeah, I guess what are you guys' impressions kind of coming away from that? What was your initial reaction to that?
The chant?
Yeah, kind of just that sequence at the end there.
I had first the mention of like water being opposite to fire, walk with me,
Yeah.
but also being kind of similar prayer chants. I don't know if that was intentional or not. And the only time we've ever heard like have white horse imagery is the white horse being the bringer of death to Leland's victims. Those are the only two things that really stood out to me, like that I felt like I could latch on to really. Other than that, I'm kind of clueless on it. Just leaves more questions than answers.
Yeah.
I feel like when he was chanting that, he was kind of giving more power to all of the like dudes, the midwives, yeah. And like, I mean, that bug started kind of, I feel like it got bigger when we saw it then, and it like hopped up to that window, and I felt like that was a possession moment. It was just like, you're mine now, to that little girl, and it was kind of them taking control of this like little town. I don't know.
Yeah.
It was a lot.
Yeah, no, it is, and it's also like his voice is different. You get a straighter performance of that than his Godlight, which is this heavily modulated and distorted.
And his mouth is like closed almost when he says it in that
Right?
previous
Yeah,
scene.
yeah. And in this, that performance is really good. Like there's the way some of that's delivered, because it isn't we've kind of talked about ritualistically, it's not the same delivery over and over. Like there's this transformation kind of as he goes through it, and he's hitting different things and emphasizing different things, and it feels like it's kind of transforming kind of, and it's just an insane cool thing. And And then we see an extremely graphic head crushing in this. I've never seen anyone reach into the back of someone's head. And I'm gonna make a bold statement right now. I never want to see it again.
Oh, so you didn't see the first season of Heroes then?
I did not, and I never will. Now, thank you for saving me.
You probably shouldn't, because it just leads you to the disappointing 2 and 3. But
and the Return 4, which I can't believe I even give a shot.
You're the hero in that sense. But yeah, man, yeah, it's stuck with that stuff is stuck with me forever. And let's talk about that thing going into that girl's mouth.
Longest yawn of all time, Susie. Close your damn mouth.
Something about how they timed that out is really, like, in a gross way, like, satisfying. Like, just the way it crawls, how that last foot just kind of, like, slowly comes in, and then she closes her mouth, like I don't know.
Yeah. The thing for me is when it's first going in and there's just 6 arms feeling around, like, the edges of her mouth. I'm just like, God.
As soon as I realized what was happening, I was done. I noticed that your wives were both done as well. I don't know if anybody else was. I was like, I know what's going to happen. I don't need to see this. I can already imagine it. Oh.
Yeah. But yeah, and even the moment right before, like, when it does that little vibration thing or whatever that prompts her to open her mouth, like, is horrifying.
But I mean, all that seems so like narratively, like within I don't know how to word that, like when the creature hatches, that's its purpose. It like knows, like
it's going somewhere,
instinctively, like it's like head straight there. It's not like wandering around. It's like, oh, here's this girl sleeping, let me crawl in. It's like it's very direct to go there. She seems to be like almost in a different state of mind, open her mouth willingly, let it crawl, and then closes her mouth, then swallows. Yeah. Like, so it just, there's a lot of weird things about it.
Yeah. Yeah. Bizarre. And that's where the episode ends.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Good for that episode.
Was anyone expecting it to end there?
I don't think so. I don't know. I don't think anyone was expecting it to end there.
I think once I realized, like, hey, we're not going to go back to Twin Peaks or Buckhorn or people that we know, I was like, it could end at any second. Yeah, I don't know.
As weird as this sounds, I felt like I had lost track of time. Like, I hadn't felt like an hour had passed. I was like, oh, it feels like it's only been like 30 minutes, but at the same time, it feels like it's been eternity.
I feel like that has happened to me several times with The Return, with many of these episodes where they end and I'm like, holy shit, an hour has just passed. Like, I was not expecting that ending
Which is so crazy because all of the episodes are basically the same length too, right? I mean, it's all an hour show basically. Yeah.
I mean,
yet they all feel different in length or experience.
Yeah.
How do you feel like the runners of Showtime felt when this was like they were getting the dailies on this shit there?
I don't think they asked for dailies. I really think that they put this in hands were like, okay.
Well, I'm sure like most of them knew what they were getting into, but I just want to know if there's like someone who was like, fuck, this is like
I'm sure.
The way you put it before, it's like they put their Sunday nights, like an hour of their Sunday night slot to this. Like this would have been the one that I feel like someone would have been like, hey, we want people to keep watching. Like and that's this, like, it seems like every episode just strengthens my view on like, this is just a weird 18-hour movie. And it's hard to break this up into hour segments.
He earned it with the first 7 hours, though. Like, I think once you're in, you're in. And whether you care for the avant-garde stuff or the trying to figure out the mythical connections, the philosophical connections, I think you're interested. And to someone who watches this and is like, okay, I'm in on Twin Peaks, but like this is really hard to watch. I don't enjoy it. I totally get it. Like I know it's not for everyone. I'm interested to see how much more, because you got to remember we had the earlier avant-garde sequence. Also, like, at least for the explosions part, a lot of this actually reminded me of the Tree of Life sequence.
Oh my god, I can't believe you said that.
And stuff, And so I think
the same thing.
If you've watched a lot of movies and you kind of know what you're doing when you're really getting a filmmaker's filmmaker, I think the vibes start to play a little bit more. And I think for Showtime, like when they invested, Showtime's always the baby brother to HBO in a lot of ways, and they've tried being the sexier one, and they've tried, following some niches. And in this streaming day, I think huge move to just say we're gonna get someone really talented and like we're gonna bet on them. but I bet this wasn't as inexpensive as when they make Halo next year. So
right, yeah,
why not?
for sure.
Like, and bang for your buck, you're going to get cult status. You're going to get, let's say, 500,000 people who are going to subscribe for these 7 weeks just for this, and then maybe they're going to watch billions, or they're going to watch online. Sorry, I like to think about like the business strategy behind it, so like from HBO's perspective. But yeah, I wonder if they were previewing these episodes, if they were like, I wonder if they've even asked for any changes, or they said let's put more of the narrative in. But I mean, if they're nerds, I think they got really excited by it.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, I'm a sucker for this shit, and like stuff like this, I wish more people were allowed to be as free as he's been allowed to be here. And that's for anyone. Like, I love stuff that, for me, art, the best form of art for me is you have to say stuff without saying it. And let people work, like just wrap their head around and chew on it and let them unwrap it and maybe come to a different conclusion than you intended. But that to me is like the best, but it's not the only way it should be. And so like I like people from other genres who have completely different thoughts on filmmaking to be allowed just their kind of freedom, and I think we'd get more variety that way. I think we'd get more interesting stuff across the board if people were allowed to be as free as Dave Lynch was on, this episode in particular.
Yeah, for
Which
sure.
credit to like Netflix, because I mean, even if people are pushing the boundaries in different ways or ways that like I'm not interested in, like more people are getting money to make things. Like, you remember Amazon's first slate of creative stuff for their streaming was weird. It was like Mozart in the Jungle. It was about it was the show about the transsexual woman. Like that's not represented, that's not shown. It's weird. And what I like about Twin Peaks is like this episode, some of the sequences, it probably went on a little too long, but that's what really makes it resonate. And I think we're seeing more things where it's like, did I need this Netflix show that's 6 to 8 to 10 episodes on this? No, but I mean, that's the kind of opportunities that I'm excited that more people are getting to take. And so an episode like this, like, directly correlates to me. Even bad stuff, like, I watched some this week that just fell completely flat on its face, and I quit it. But, like, that's probably a good thing. So I hope there is a little bit more of this. I think in movies, because it seems like we're going to getting tiny movies or giant movies, we're hearing about some more of the tiny movies that maybe we wouldn't have heard about before.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And this episode was incredibly well received. Like when it was on, it was. I mean, basically this aired, and then the next week there was no episode of Twin Peaks. Like there was 2 weeks between this episode and the next episode, and man, people talked about it a lot.
That's awesome. Like I said, once you're in, you're in. I think.
Well, and it's interesting because I look at something like this too, and it's like, you cut the first 10 minutes of this, and you could just air this as a standalone thing. Like there's enough here for it to
like
just stand as its own thing. But yeah, then you drop it in the middle of an 18-hour thing that you're doing, and man, but who knows?
A one long movie is the only way to describe it, because otherwise, why the hell haven't we seen Buckhorn again? I mean, we have seen Buckhorn, just not. What's his ass? Bill Hastings. Bill Hastings are the people around it. Yeah. We also, I mean, it makes me wonder how much Twin Peaks are we going to get? Yeah. Like, to this point, especially after killing Mr. C, although it seems like in some way that entity is not dead. Like, I like that I never know what's going to come. I think I had actually told you a few months ago that I heard about a nuclear bomb going off, and I was like, that's so whack. That's so something Twin Peaks would do. And you're like, don't worry, that's not a spoiler. And you're right. So I'm like, maybe we're just going to veer off and see even less of those characters because we've gotten, I want to say 4 or 5 classic characters that have been on screen once. And I'm like, I think you've hinted at a couple we're not going to see again. And I'm like, I wanted to see more and maybe see those other people factor in just a little bit. Like, we might not.
Well, we have, 10 episodes
weirder.
left?
There's 10 episodes left. We're not even halfway through yet.
Wait. Oh, yeah.
So,
man, can't count.
But yeah, so we're basically from here on out, we'll be watching 2 episodes a week. We've got 5 weeks until we're done with Twin Peaks. Oh, man, I hate saying that. Oh, I just wanted to go on forever. So next week we'll watch parts 9 and 10. If anyone who's listening, if you have any thoughts or stuff you want to talk about, you can email us at rewatchersonthepod@gmail.com or reach out to us on Twitter on at RewatchersPod. That's our Twitter handle, at RewatchersPod. Woof.
By the way, in pop culture, I see so many more references than I once did to Twin Peaks.
Yeah.
And so it's fun, and we will, if we see those memes use those things, like we will tweet them out. And I think it's a fun little community on, it's obviously a Reddit community, but on Twitter as well. So follow us.
Yeah, it's fun. But yeah, so we're going to go ahead. We'll talk about some other stuff we've been watching and recommendations after this. But yeah, we will see you after the music. Welcome back to the recommendation section of our podcast, where we talk about some other stuff that we're watching to just hold us over until we can get another hit of that sweet, sweet Twin Peaks.
You snort that shit like Laura
flicking my veins right now.
I'll start. I feel like the things I've done are things that multiple of us have experienced this last week. So really quick, Terrace House, the hit Japanese reality TV show that everyone should be watching, dropped 8 new episodes of a new house, 6 new fresh-faced, I was going to say teens, but none of them are teens, living together in Tokyo and just trying.
It's the oldest group, actually.
Yeah, let's talk about that. Anyways, Tokyo, they're back in Tokyo, which is where this show should
Mecca.
always be. Yeah, let's not move it out of Tokyo anymore. I liked Kurosawa, but let's keep it in Tokyo.
Nah, fuck that.
Never in Hawaii again.
Nah,
not allowed back in Hawaii. But Terrace House, basically just the elevator pitch. It is real world, but with people with consciences, and it's 3 guys and 3 girls. Just live in a house together and live their lives like they normally do. And lots of them come with goals or things they want to accomplish. When they have accomplished those things or feel like it's their time to leave, they just leave. Which would never happen on American TV. Everyone's fighting to stay in those houses.
Take my face off that, no way.
Yeah. But it's just a delightful show, full of delightful people. And it's also, my favorite part about it is the room of commentators.
We like to think of ourselves as one of them.
Yeah, yeah, really. There's just this room of delightful people also watching the show who then give their 2 cents on everything. And I've watched 4 of the 8 episodes that just got released, and I really love it. It feels.
I've watched 2, and it feels really strong.
Yeah,
coming out of the gates
for sure. And things are happening, and it's just delight to watch. I watched an episode right before we came over here, and it was funny. Chelsea, me and Riley's sister-in-law, just sat down and was immediately within 2 minutes, just all the way in on the stuff that was going down, and
does not surprise me.
It's just delightful. It's a show. If you like reality TV, watch this so you never have to watch garbage again, because it's
like wholesome.
Yeah, it's
in a weird
extremely
way.
wholesome.
And one thing that's intriguing about it is we're getting more and more. I don't know. It's definitely been more people who want to be models and actors on the show. And so that's a little frustrating because The Bachelor made a change about 3 years ago. Not made a change, but where people really started making a lot more social media money, and they are a little bit more fame hoary. Mm-hmm. And it's done an okay job of navigating it. But the fact is, these people still seem so much more real on Terrace House, even though a lot of them really are there for fame.
Yeah.
One, the commentary room helps to cut them down.
For sure.
Be you ain't shit, because they're legit famous people in Japan. And so I still love the practicality of the way that they discuss culture and their discussions. And you see westernization leak in. You see how different people act. This group feels like they're moving relationship-wise a little bit quicker than some of the other seasons, which the way they go about it differently from us is what interests me. But yeah,
the cultural differences
are
are really what's really fun about the show. I think. Well, several things.
Yeah.
But
where is it available? Where to watch?
Netflix.
On Netflix.
Yeah.
All right.
Watch Boys and Girls in the City first.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's really good.
There's 4 seasons of this show.
It's
Start
worth
with
your time,
that one.
Mark. It's
3 of them are worth watching.
Yes, I agree with you. Sorry, I was trying to think. What's the one? Oh yeah, fucking Hawaii.
It wasn't that bad.
It was bad.
But yeah, it's pretty cool.
Fuck that season, honestly.
Marcus has
I haven't even
never
watched
seen
it.
It's still fun. If you're into terror shows, you'll still enjoy it.
Here's what I want to know about this show. This show has raised serious questions for me. How the fuck does anyone in Japan who is a model get work? That market is oversaturated.
That's what it
There's
feels like.
always
Yeah.
a model in the house.
I will say that this season, just at the beginning, it does feel like, oh, here's some people who also are just. There's this 20-year-old kid who. We don't know anything about what he wants to do, which is great. Like he
He
just
works
there.
part time at retail, and he kind of talks about it like it's his purpose at first. And
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
Oh, okay.
it's
that's
like
your
Dick
thing?
Tremaine.
All right.
Yeah. Men's fashion.
He's the Dick Tremaine of Japan.
I would,
sporting
I would
goods.
kill for Dick Tremaine to be in the house of terrorists.
But yeah, it's great. Watch it. And then we're gonna keep this really brief. But me and Tyler and Justin have much like. Almost as long as people had to wait for season 3 of Twin Peaks, we had to wait for Borderlands 3 since Borderlands 2 came out 7 years ago. And I love it.
Yeah, I remember playing Borderlands 2 in our old apartment.
Yes.
On my Return of the Jedi sheets on my bed because the TV was at the end of the bed.
Yes.
Yeah, man.
That was great. I remember going and picking up Borderlands 2 with Austin, bringing him back to our apartment, and then me and him in the lid playing our other roommate, who was also named Tyler.
You had 3 Tylers in one
We had
apartment.
3 Tylers, and his name was Tyler. Should I say his full name? Anyways, his last name let us give him. I just assign nicknames to people with my same name, which is what I've been doing for years, and so he just became the lid.
That's why people refer to me as Tracy McGrady.
It just started as shorthand for me to differentiate between all the Tylers that I was
Right.
telling stories about. Anyways, Borderlands 3 is really good.
We're off to a great start.
Borderlands 3 is basically more Borderlands, more of everything good about Borderlands.
It's a hotter, sexier, smoother Borderlands.
Smoother? Is it smoother, Justin? I know that.
It's full of poop jokes.
So many
I'd
poop
call that
jokes.
smoother.
Smoother.
Nice.
Just as easy on the ears as it's ever been, I guess. Whatever that means. But yeah, Borderlands 3 is just a blast. I've been playing it all weekend. I think the most fun that I had was we played together last night with 4 of us. It's basically just 4 people running around. You each have specific heroes with specific abilities and just the wildest ass guns. It's been in their marketing for years, over 1 billion guns. They're just these procedurally generated, all these pieces into all these unique guns. Stuff like,
Tell them about the alien gun you got.
yeah, so I have a gun that now when I press to reload it, instead I throw the gun, it becomes a brain with spider legs and starts to run around and shoot my enemies with bullets. Standard FPS shooter stuff. But no, it's really fun. Like it's definitely just that really refreshing loop of finding new stuff, new guns to play with, new abilities to explore, and I think this time around too, we kind of talked about exploring the areas is so fun, and Borderlands has such a distinct look, art wise and art direction wise, that it's just fun it's just a fun world to run around and play in, and I'm having a blast. So.
Single player, it's really great. Single player, if you can play with other people, I think that takes the experience, just ups it so much. Like you were talking about last night, all 4 of us together, all the shit that was going on the screen, like it's just insane.
And then also just getting to run around the social space and troll the shit out of each other with dumbass shields.
With the amount of explosions that go on with 4
elevator.
people in, it's like Michael Bay has an erection somewhere.
Yeah, it's
great.
It's really great. It's really fun. But yeah, so those are the things I've been doing. Marcus, did you have something to talk about?
I do. I have three things to briefly mention.
Oh boy.
Somebody's had time.
Well, last week I mentioned how I watched something called The Pyramid Code.
Cool. Yeah,
And Netflix is great at suggesting different things to watch. So it was like, because you watched The Pyramid Code, you should watch The Code. It's just called The Code.
Original.
And it's nice job. Really interesting, actually. They did it
like
again.
The theme of this podcast is Marcus being like, so watching the code and we're like, wow, what a bullshit thing. It's actually pretty good. Oh, cool. Yeah, cool.
So it talks about how.
Sorry, answer me this really quickly. Is it just the pyramid code without the pyramids?
No, not really.
Good. Okay, then it's off to a great start. I'm excited.
It talks about how mathematics and numbers fit into the natural world.
Cool.
I thought it was really interesting. I don't know how much I can talk beyond that because a lot of the things are really complicated.
Yeah.
Well,
You have to know the code.
one of the,
Yeah, we got
yeah, it's
Us
the code,
peons
you know.
wouldn't understand.
Well, like it talks about things like the mathematical principle of like -1 times -1 equals 1, and they try to find that examples of that in the natural world, and also things like, okay, there's a number out there when you multiply it by itself, it equals -1, but we don't know what that is, so those are imaginary numbers. So they don't actually exist, but we use imaginary numbers in things like radar technology to tell where planes are on a foggy day, and we just know how to do stuff like that. It's just it's so
Interesting.
fascinating to me.
Yeah.
So I watched that. Also, I watched this thing called The Mind Explained on Netflix. I think it's relatively new. There are like 5 short little 20-minute episodes. It's narrated by Emma Stone. It's very stylistically done. It's really cool. There's an episode that talks about dreams, one that talks about memory, one that talks about the effect of psychedelics on the brain. It's fascinating.
Cool.
Love that kind of shit. And then today I watched Mystic River, which was 2003, Clint Eastwood. It's got Sean Penn, Tim Robbins. Good flick. I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
And that's about it.
Okay, cool. Are all those on Netflix? Is Mystic River on Netflix?
I don't know if Mystic River was on
Okay.
Netflix. I don't remember where I watched it.
So now is The Code, The Mind Explained,
And Mystic
and
River.
Mystic River. Sweet. Cool.
I also got some. Maybe it's kind of what Mitchell just mentioned, but like I got some major Twin Peaks season 1 vibes from Mystic River. Kind of because it has. Have you seen it?
Yeah. It's been a while since I've seen it, but yeah.
It kind of just has the same basic story of like a murder and investigation and stuff, but there are some very reminiscent scenes.
Yeah.
But
Cool.
good stuff. I recommend it.
Cool. Yeah. River's great. All right. Riley, did you have some stuff to recommend?
Just Terrace House.
Just Terrace.
It's great.
Yeah. It's so delightful.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Yeah. The Room, I'll just say this. Watching that Room just talk about the shit that's happening brings the greatest joy to my heart. I love so much of it. Tyler, do you have anything to recommend? outside
Yeah,
of that?
I also watched Terrace House, play Borderlands MC, do them both. I finally, after years and years and years, finished Seven Samurai. And I started in high school. I got about halfway through and wanted to continue, but that was like during a point in my life where like movies kind of opened up to me. I had access to a lot more of them.
Yeah.
So I was like watching multiple things at a time, starting and stopping them. Horrible way to watch movies. It's like a kid who just discovered drugs and then had like a whole stash open to him at once.
Movies. A lot like drugs.
Not a kid in a candy store, a kid with drugs.
I mean, have you seen movies?
Anyway, then like years later, which was what, like 2 years ago, maybe 2 years ago,
Sure,
somewhere
yeah.
in there, I borrowed Seven Samurai from Tyler on the Criterion Collection Blu-ray, and I was like, sweet, this is it. My kid would not let me get through it when I tried to watch it. I finally
Not a Kurosawa fan, which puts me at unease a little bit, but I don't know.
I got
How old
about
is he?
old enough to know that he should be he's watching a masterpiece. So I watched like 10 to 15 minute chunks at a time. Got about halfway through, forgot the movie's 3 hours. Thought I was like, oh yeah, I only got 20 minutes left. No. So then this week I was like, it took me 2 sittings to finish 3/4 of the movie, but I finally did it. And yeah, Kurosawa, great. I really enjoy watching his stuff. I mean, the story's great. Writing's great, all that stuff. There's some pacing things I probably would have cut down a bit just for my personal taste, but his cinematography is phenomenal. It is. I mean, they show it a lot in like film school and stuff, but like, I don't know, it's so and especially being in black and white, it was easier to create depth back then with that, and he uses depth really, really well.
Yeah.
He uses environments really, really well.
Yeah.
I watched Seven Samurai because of film school, and I could barely tell you anything about it because it's not easy to get through. It is long, it is black and white, and it is very stylistically Japanese, and also it was a time when he did what he wanted.
Yeah.
And so it was really interesting.
I will say, I think Kurosawa, if you are looking to get into like more like outside of American filmmakers or stuff like that, Kurosawa is a great place to start because he does have very Japanese sensibilities, but he also loves Western thought, and like
that's why Seven Samurai has been remade as Western like 5 times.
Yeah, and Campbellian mythology is throughout his. I mean, the hero's journey stuff is everywhere. But yeah, and also there's a great YouTube video, Every Frame of Painting, which I'm pretty sure everyone's familiar with that YouTube channel. He has a great episode about Kurosawa and how he uses movement, like you're saying, environmental movement in his films, and it's absolutely incredible. All of his stuff is great to watch.
Every shot.
Yeah,
There's no like just like filler stuff to get to the good shots. It's like even the most dull scenes, you can tell were set up painstakingly. Yeah, the movement especially I noticed was you always had, no matter at what point in the movement of the shots, it was always an interesting composition where I don't know how the hell you do that. Like that should be impossible, like theoretically, but he does it.
Yeah. He's really great.
And now for some bullshit. We're going to go from Kurosawa to an anti-recommendation.
Oh,
that
yes.
I decided to throw in here because I decided, I was like, okay, I need something on, and I knew I couldn't fully focus on it, but I was like, I want to watch something new. So I started watching The Island on Netflix. That's I-Land.
No.
Starring Kate Bosworth and the hot douchebag from I Am Number 4. Man, it is one of the worst things I've seen in a very long time. And I have very low standards. Like, obviously, I watch the prestige shit, but I also really like to enjoy myself. And 2 episodes in, I knew I hadn't gotten to the part where I found out that they were in... spoiler alert. No, it's a 7-episode series. Cool. They're in like a VR self-appointed prison to see if you can rehabilitate people because the world is so overpopulated that they have to see if they can make bad people good again through these simulations. I didn't even get that far, guys, because I got halfway through episode 2 and I was like, this is even too shitty for me. The Lost references got really old after 20 minutes, and I Googled what happened at the end.
What happens?
What? I just explained.
Oh, that's the end?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought you find that out in episode 2.
People are all on the island, and there's these random objects next to all of them, and then you can tell they're just being messed with. Someone almost dies right away. It's got some interesting pieces, but man, it's actually not a horrible overall idea. Although I think anything that ends with they were unconscious the whole time is a little rough to pull right now. Man,
it's just another variation of it was a dream the whole time.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Like,
And so don't watch that. If you want to watch something that's like bad but you're gonna enjoy it, watch 4 Weddings and a Funeral on Hulu because it's just some delightful rom-com shit, man.
I mean, watch. I mean, 4 Weddings and a Funeral in basically any form, right?
Yeah, there's also
I've
a
liked
movie
both those
on
movies.
Netflix it's the same guy who did like Love Actually and Notting Hill.
Yeah,
like it's. That is stuff that you can say is low grade but enjoyable. Yeah, don't watch The Island.
No,
because you know what I
it's
like?
It's okay to watch The Island, the Michael Bay movie, because it's not bad.
That might be Michael Bay's best movie.
Do not watch Land.
Yeah, because you'll land yourself in a pickle.
I'm all good
selling pickles.
I got a pickle. Oh, can I make one more Sean Penn comment? I listened to a podcast interview with Sean Penn. One, why is Sean Penn doing podcast interviews?
Who knows?
He's one of the more out-of-touch people on purpose in a pretentious way, but I don't hate him for it.
Yeah.
He went on the Bill Simmons podcast. It's a really popular podcast where he interviews. He talks about basketball and sports a lot, but he gets really popular guests because he's so well listened to. And it was just really interesting to listen to him. He's now mostly an author, and his rule was, he's like, if I have to go somewhere for more than 2 days and I'm going to be uncomfortable, not like the material, or not make a shit ton of money, I'm not going. And I was like, that is refreshing, Sean Penn. I'd also like to remark that in the movie Dickie Roberts Child Star, which is David Spade's best work, David Spade's trying to resurrect his career with Rob Reiner, and he's like, he's trying to get this big role in like an Oscar bait movie and not be a child star, but be taken seriously. And they're like, well, you got the audition, but someone else is auditioning right now. They're like, who? I'm like, Sean Penn. Sean Penn! And I just think it's so funny to think that Sean Penn and David Spade would be up for the same role.
Well,
Sorry, you mentioned Sean Penn, and I had to go off on that. Thanks, Mystic River. Okay.
I do appreciate that segue because he's the only guest we could get for next week. So listen up to hear Sean Penn's takes on parts 9 and 10. He hasn't seen any other episodes of Twin Peaks, so we'll bring a really fresh take to it.
I wonder if he's worked with David Lynch. He should.
Oh, please, God, no. Justin, did you have some recommendations for us?
Just a mention, just kind of call back to what I was talking about in the main part of our podcast about Penderecki. While I was kind of looking stuff up, because I hadn't actually studied this piece or even really thought about it since college when I was going through music history stuff. But I found there's a YouTube video where you can actually go and see the score. It's been animated, so you can listen to the music and it has the score. You can watch the score and like the parts that are playing are highlighted. So if you have any familiarity with like reading music or anything like that and kind of the traditional notation for music, you should go check this out because the way that Threnody was written, even the score itself is kind of an avant-garde piece. In like there isn't any standardized musical notation. There aren't any bars of any kind. It's all notated with like how long a certain section is supposed to last in seconds, and there's like the different strings have been grouped. There's different groups of string instruments, and you can visually see what you're like. It's very easy to see what you're hearing if you're not used to reading music. Like there's just like parts where everybody's playing. It's just like bunch of black bars with arrows kind of pointing like the direction that the pitch ends up going. If you have any interest in kind of some crazy music stuff, you should go check that out. It's just an animated score. If you just like search on YouTube for Penderecki or Threnody animation or something like that, you'll find it. But it's really cool. And along with that, if you can find any interviews with Penderecki, because he's still around. He's done interviews recently. I don't know like how his health is right now because he's pretty old. Mm-hmm. But I found a couple of interviews from just maybe 6 or 7 years ago that he was doing, and he was talking about what it was like writing avant-garde music during the time that he was writing it. He's talking about like how he was exposed to electronic music and how that kind of influenced his work on Threnody, which I thought was really cool. If you have any interest in kind of music history stuff, nerdy music stuff, you should check that out. It's really interesting and pretty fascinating.
Cool. Yeah, that sounds awesome. I actually want to watch that video.
Yeah.
Cool. Oh man, I will mention we also lost Daniel Johnston this week, which I know I'd recommended. He's a musician from the 90s. Great documentary, Devil and Daniel Johnston, about he's got tons of mental health problems, wrote some pretty incredible stuff. He died of a heart attack this week, which sucks and bums me out. Go listen to some Daniel Johnston. He's really great. But yeah, we will see you guys next week. We're going to watch 2 more episodes and start to head towards some kind of ending at some point with all of this. But yeah, so parts 9 and 10. And until then, signing off, this is Tyler Harris.
Marcus Marinos.
Riley Harris.
Tyler McKinley.
Mitchell Marshall.
Justin Hammer.
Got a light. Got a light.
Let's just layer all those, please.
I hope the button is just me saying satanic popes are the raddest thing on the planet.